I think it's more of an artful, maybe it's more of a science. Either way, I do know this. Frag plugs are ugly. A fantastic day to all of my fellow and future hobbyists out there. My name is Matthew. I'm your BRS beginner guru. Welcome to the penultimate episode in this series, episode 45, how to add corals to your display tank. If you have not watched episode 44, this episode right here, you need to watch that first because this episode right here is going to assume that you have already inspected, dipped, and remove pests from your corals. The first thing we need to consider is where to place your corals. And this is where that whole debate comes in, whether it's more of a science and more of an art. And really, it's somewhere in between. The hobbyists who are best at this definitely have an eye for art. I mean, that's without a doubt. They understand colors, they understand movement, and I just don't possess that gift. So I have to go more the science route, but you really do need to blend both. So the first thing I like to do when thinking about where to place my corals is just to visualize the aquascape. I like to walk around from all angles, all corners, look at it, especially from the angle that I'm probably going to view it most, which for me is this angle right here, right? Watch. Could you guys even see that? That's a new purchase. I spend so much time sitting in that lounge chair now just staring at my corals. So visualize your tank overall from all those angles and visualize in your mind where each of the corals that you've already quarantined, dipped, inspected, and removed pests, where they might go. Well, what specifically do you need to consider when thinking about where to put your corals? I think I have come up with eight things to consider. The first of which is the color. Certain colors go well together, certain colors contrast well together, and other colors just don't seem to mix very well. Some people know this intuitively, some people can use a color wheel to plan this out, but trying to think of what colors your corals are and which colors will likely look best together is step one. Next, you need to consider the growth rate for the corals. And if you're using the corals that we recommended, we talked about the growth rate in each of those, but it's important to consider the growth rate and how they're going to grow. Because if you put corals 6 inches apart and that might be enough, maybe they grow really fast and will quickly, I mean within 6 months, get close enough and start attacking each other. So understanding each coral's growth rate and giving them space to grow is really key. The third consideration is aggression. As we all know, some corals are aggressive, some are not. You certainly do not want to place aggressive corals in an area where they're going to be able to push out their sweeper tentacles and sting and kill your neighboring corals. It's happened to all of us. Ask any experienced hobbyist out there. They thought they give it enough distance and then they come one morning out to their tank and they look and these long sweeper tentacles have killed off a prized piece of their SPS corals. So think about that. Do your research if you're not sure how aggressive your coral is and give enough space. Number 4 is the flow pattern in your tank. Some corals love high flow, some medium flow, some corals love low flow. And depending on where your return nozzles are, where your wave makers are, you can probably get a pretty good understanding of where the water movement is most strong and where it is most weak. That's a key consideration because corals that like higher flow obviously will need to be put in those higher flow areas of your tank and vice versa for those lower flow. For example, in my reef tank right back here, I really struggled to find the right placement for my Ricordia mushrooms, my bounce mushrooms, and I had to move them a couple times because I thought they were in an area of the tank in low flow, but they were just getting blasted way too much. So consider flow when placing your corals. Number 5 is light. Really, we're talking about par levels here. Are your corals low light loving corals and want 25 to 50 par, something like acans, which love to be near the bottom of your aquascape? Or do you have some really high light loving corals, some SPS corals that just crave 253, 350 par? Well, understanding where light is the strongest in your tank is key. The best way to do this is to get a par meter. You can purchase them from BRS or you can find one from a local hobbyist, borrow it and give it back, because our eyes are terrible at predicting where par is most strong. I used to think with some of my lights that I knew where the high par levels would be, and yes, obviously higher up on the scape is going to be higher in par, but you would be surprised with how those LED lenses, if you have them, throw out par in different parts of your tank. So if you can, purchase a par meter or borrow one from a friend, dial in those par par, know exactly what parts of your aquascape have what par, then you'll know where to put your corals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth consideration is height, and this really links directly into those par levels. Height is really important. The deeper you go in your tank, the less par, because water is going to filter out the intensity as it gets lower and lower. So when you're thinking of where to put those corals, low light corals are going to go lower down and in the corners. Corals that need medium light are probably going to go a little bit closer to the middle and higher up. And high light corals are going to be probably as high as possibly allowed in your tank, closest to the center. The seventh consideration is shadowing. Now there are two things to consider here. Number one, what shadows does your aquascape naturally create? This is not a bad thing to have shadows in your tank, because you may have some extremely low light corals that want shadow areas, and that's perfect. But you also need to consider the shadows that your corals are going to create. If you get some sort of plating coral that's going to grow out over time, then don't put some coral directly beneath that, because what's going to happen is it's just going to create shade and you're going to have to move that coral. Also, if you have some larger corals with maybe some really long polyps, some sort of euphyllia, if you understand the flow in your tank, those polyps are probably going to cast a shadow nearby. So just consider shadowing, because that will help you place your coral in the correct lighting environment. Eighth consideration is, how are you going to attach your coral to your aquascape? Some kinds of rock are just easier to attach coral. I really wish we could get Pukani rock nowadays, because there were so many nooks and crannies that it made attaching coral really easy. But a lot of our human-made rock nowadays is really quite smooth. So if you have a large coral that you know you're going to stick on your aquascape, if you're trying to attach it to a smooth portion, maybe that's like vertical or maybe even slightly going this direction, you might want to think twice, because it might be challenging to get that coral to stick, even using super glue and epoxy. Or let's say you have some sort of stony coral with a long base. The easiest thing to do is going to be to put that into some sort of cranny or nook in that rock work. So considering each coral and how you're going to attach it may help you determine where that coral is best. At the end of the day, there are some people who are just naturally better than this at others. I've gotten better over time. Here's an image of one of my first attempts almost a decade ago. It was decent. The tank looked pretty good. It quickly went downhill after this photo. And here is an example from today in a mixed reef tank that is packed with corals. Understanding the science, of course, is going to be absolutely crucial, or you're going to have unhappy, dead corals that you're going to have to move or pull out once they bleach out and die. But once you understand those 8 factors, then it really comes down to your artistic eye. If you want colors then clash because that's beautiful to you, then go ahead and do that. This is supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to be engaging, and the end goal is something that's beautiful to you. So don't let anybody else tell you that that doesn't look good. If you think it looks great, go with it. Moving on to the gear you're gonna need your glues, your accelerants. You don't need accelerant, but it definitely makes life a lot easier when placing corals, and epoxy. You may not use all of these every time, but having them close by makes it really handy if you do need them. Then we have your propagation kits. You obviously don't necessarily need an entire propagation tip, but you're probably gonna need at least some bone cutters, maybe a razor blade if you're dealing with soft corals, and one of these kits, the deluxe or the standard one from BRS, are just a really easy and neat way to go about it. Next up are rubber bands. You may not need rubber bands. Well, this is a rubber band ball. My daughter and I started making this. Our plan was to make it a huge rubber band ball, but we just got bored. But if you're gonna be attaching soft corals to your aquascape, rubber bands are really helpful for doing that. Next up, you're gonna need towels. Here's what I like to do, because I always tend to get my hands in the tank and then I don't have a towel around. So I grab one towel, I put it in the back left pocket. I grab towel number 2, it goes in the back right pocket. Towel number 3 either goes above the shoulder, or I stuff it in the front left pocket. That way, what's gonna eventually happen is I'm gonna take one out and I'm gonna dry my hands off and I'm gonna drop it, and then I'm gonna forget that I don't have a towel, but then I have backup towels. You can obviously do this however you want, but have towels nearby, because I'm sure, as any hobbyist can tell you, there are so many times when they put their hands in the tank without a towel nearby, and then they're trying to wipe it off, or they're running through the house like this. It just gets annoying. Then I think it's a good idea to have some long tweezers. I don't always use these, but I find them to be really helpful. Sometimes I just can't get my hand into a tight area in the tank where I want to put my coral, and long tweezers can go around your frag plug like this and do the work for you. And the last gear is just different kinds of frag plugs. You may not need these because your corals are probably already on frag plugs, but there have been so many times when I've been trying to trim a frag plug off, or I actually want to keep the frag plug in there, especially one that has the base on it, and I accidentally pop the coral off, and then it's way harder to attach. So if you have some of these nearby, you can quickly glue it onto a new frag plug and put it in your tank. So what are the overarching methods for attaching your coral to your aquascape? Well, that is next episode. As always, everyone, thanks for watching. Happy reefing, be well. We'll see you next time.